The wedding invitation arrived on a Tuesday, pristine and cream-colored, addressed to my parents in elegant calligraphy. I found it on the kitchen counter when I came home from work, propped against the fruit bowl like some kind of shrine. My stomach dropped before I even read the words. Mr. and Mrs. Robert Chen request the pleasure of your company at the marriage of their daughter, Jessica Chen, to Michael Rodriguez. I stared at the invitation, my hands trembling slightly. Jessica. According to YouTube analytics, 99.3% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. My cousin Jessica, who I'd grown up with, shared secrets with, considered more like a sister than a cousin. Jessica, who was getting married in 3 weeks, and apparently, I hadn't made the guest list. "Mom?" I called out, my voice catching slightly. She emerged from the laundry room, arms full of folded towels, and I held up the invitation. Her face went carefully neutral, the expression she wore when she was about to deliver bad news. "Oh, that came today," she said, as if it were nothing more than a utility bill. "Why is it addressed to you and Dad? Where's mine?" The pause stretched between us like a chasm. Mom set down the towels and sighed, the sound heavy with resignation and something else I couldn't quite identify. "Lily, honey, you're not invited." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What do you mean I'm not invited?" "It's Jessica's wedding. We've been planning this together for months. She asked me to help her pick out her dress, for God's sake. I know this is hard to hear." "Hard to hear?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Mom, what the hell is going on?" She flinched at my language, then straightened her shoulders in that way that meant she was about to say something I really didn't want to hear. "Jessica's mother thinks. Aunt Linda thinks it would be better if you didn't attend." "Better? Better for who?" "For Jessica. For the family." Mom's voice grew smaller with each word. "They're worried that your presence might overshadow the day." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Overshadow how exactly?" Another pause. Another sigh. "Lily, you know how you get at family events. You have a tendency to make things about yourself." The accusation hung in the air between us like smoke. I thought about all the family gatherings where I'd supposedly made things about myself. My high school graduation where I'd cried during the speech because I was overwhelmed with gratitude for my parents' support. My college acceptance celebration where I'd gotten emotional thanking everyone who believed in me. My promotion party where I'd apparently talked too much about my career goals. "That's not fair," I whispered. "And then there's the whole situation with David," Mom continued. And there it was. The real reason. David, Jessica's ex-boyfriend from 2 years ago, the one who had broken up with her and, 6 months later, asked me out. The one I'd dated for exactly 3 weeks before realizing he was still hung up on Jessica and ending things cleanly. The one who had somehow become the nuclear bomb in our family dynamic, despite the fact that Jessica was now marrying someone else entirely. That was 2 years ago, Mom. Jessica is marrying Michael. She's happy. I'm happy. Why is this still an issue? Because Linda says Jessica still feels uncomfortable about it. She says seeing you at the wedding would bring back painful memories and ruin what should be the happiest day of her life. I stared at my mother, this woman who had raised me, who had supposedly loved me unconditionally, and felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. "So that's it? I don't get to see my cousin get married because of some ancient history that has nothing to do with anyone anymore?" "I'm sorry, Lily. I really am. But sometimes we have to make sacrifices for family harmony." "What about my harmony? What about how this makes me feel?" But Mom had already turned away, picking up her towels again. "You'll understand when you're older. Family relationships are complicated. I was 26 years old. That night, I called Jessica directly. She answered on the third ring, her voice bright and cheerful until she realized it was me. "Oh, hi Lily. Hi yourself. Congratulations on the wedding. I just saw the invitation." Silence. "Jessica, what's going on? Why aren't I invited to your wedding?" I heard her take a shaky breath. "Lily, it's complicated." "Then uncomplicate it for me. My mom thinks it would be better if you weren't there. She says seeing you would be too hard, that it would bring up too many memories of David and—" "Your mom says?" "What do you say, Jessica? It's your wedding." Another pause. "I think maybe she's right. I think it would be easier for everyone if you just stayed home that day." The betrayal hit me like a tsunami. This was Jessica. Jessica who had cried on my shoulder when David broke up with her. Jessica who I had comforted and supported through her entire grieving process. Jessica who had thanked me for being the most understanding person in the world when I'd gently told her about David asking me out, and who had insisted she was totally fine with it and just wanted us both to be happy. "Easier for everyone," I repeated slowly. "Including you?" "Yes," she whispered, "including me." I hung up. The next 3 weeks passed in a haze of hurt and humiliation. Every day brought new reminders of the wedding I wasn't invited to attend. My social media feeds filled with posts from cousins and relatives excitedly discussing their outfits, sharing memories of Jessica, counting down the days. I watched my own family members, people I'd grown up with, people who claimed to love me, prepare for a celebration I was deliberately excluded from. My parents left for the wedding on Saturday morning, dressed in their finest clothes. Dad looked uncomfortable when he kissed me goodbye. "We'll take lots of pictures," he said quietly. "Don't bother," I replied. I spent the morning of Jessica's wedding at the gym, pushing myself through an punishing workout, trying to sweat out the resentment that had been building in my chest like pressure in a volcano. It didn't work. If anything, the physical exertion just made the emotional pain sharper, more focused. By afternoon, I was pacing my apartment like a caged animal. I could picture it all so clearly. Jessica in her dress, the one I'd helped her choose, walking down the aisle of St. Mary's Catholic Church, where we'd both been baptized, surrounded by our entire extended family, minus one. The reception at the country club, the dancing, the speeches about love and family and togetherness, all of it happening without me. That's when I remembered the video. 3 months ago, at my uncle's birthday party, Jessica had gotten spectacularly drunk. Not just tipsy, absolutely, completely, embarrassingly wasted. She'd started telling stories, including one very detailed account of her bachelorette party in Vegas that involved multiple male strippers, a significant amount of money spent at a club called Thunder Down Under, and some activities that would definitely not align with the image she was projecting as a blushing bride marrying her college sweetheart. At the time, I'd found it funny and endearing. Jessica letting loose, being human, having fun. I'd even recorded part of it on my phone because she was being so hilarious, doing impressions of the strippers and describing the other girls' antics in vivid detail. I'd completely forgotten about the video until now. My phone was in my hands before I'd consciously decided to pick it up. The video was still there, buried in my camera roll. 7 minutes of Jessica, slurring slightly but speaking clearly, regaling a small group of us with tales that would definitely not go over well with her conservative future in-laws or her Catholic ceremony. I stared at the video thumbnail for a long time. This was wrong. I knew it was wrong. Jessica didn't deserve to have her wedding ruined because she'd gotten drunk and told some embarrassing stories. Michael didn't deserve to have his wedding day tainted by his fiancée's past indiscretions. Neither of them had asked to be caught in the middle of this family drama, but they'd both chosen sides, and they hadn't chosen mine. I looked at the time, 4:47 p.m. The ceremony would be over by now. They'd be at the reception, probably just finishing dinner. Soon there would be speeches, toasts, the first dance. Everyone I loved and who claimed to love me would be raising their glasses to celebrate a love story I'd been deemed unworthy to witness. My thumb hovered over the video. I thought about Jessica's words on the phone. I think it would be easier for everyone if you just stayed home. I thought about my mother's casual dismissal of my feelings. Sometimes we have to make sacrifices for family harmony. I thought about all the family members who had said nothing when they learned I wasn't invited, who had accepted my exclusion as collateral damage in someone else's wedding planning. I opened Instagram and started a new story. "Hey everyone," I typed over the video thumbnail. Since I wasn't invited to celebrate Jessica's big day in person, I thought I'd share this sweet memory from a few months ago. Here's the bride telling us all about her Vegas bachelorette party adventures. So happy for the happy couple. My finger hovered over the share to your story button. This would hurt Jessica. It would embarrass her in front of everyone she cared about. It might cause problems in her new marriage. It would definitely cause problems in our family. It would confirm every terrible thing they'd said about me, that I was selfish, that I made everything about myself, that I was the kind of person who would ruin someone's wedding day. But I was already ruined. They'd already decided I was the villain in this story. They'd already excluded me from one of the most important days in our family's history. They'd already chosen their side. Maybe it was time I chose mine. I hit share. The response was immediate and explosive. Within minutes, my phone was buzzing with notifications. Comments started appearing on the story. Shocked emojis, laughing faces, concerned messages from relatives asking if I was okay, if this was some kind of mistake. Then came the phone calls. The first was from my cousin Mark, Jessica's brother. "Lily, what the fuck? Take that down right now." The second was from my mother. "Lily Marie, you delete that video this instant. Do you have any idea what you've done?" The third was from Jessica herself. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. "How could you do this to me? How could you be so cruel? It's my wedding day, Lily. My wedding day." I listened to her sob for a moment, feeling the first stirrings of regret. Then I remembered sitting alone in my apartment that morning while my entire family celebrated without me. "You didn't invite me," I said quietly. "That doesn't give you the right to, doesn't it? You decided I was too toxic for your wedding, that I would somehow ruin your perfect day just by existing in the same room as you. So I stayed home, like a good girl. But guess what, Jessica? I ruined your day anyway. At least this way, I got to participate." I hung up and turned off my phone. The next few days were a nightmare. My phone, when I finally turned it back on, contained 47 missed calls and 126 unread text messages. The video had been screenshotted and shared beyond my Instagram story. It was making the rounds in family group chats, being dissected and analyzed by relatives near and far. Aunt Linda left me a voicemail that was so venomous I deleted it halfway through. Uncle Robert sent me a text calling me a vindictive little bitch and telling me I was no longer welcome in his home. My mother showed up at my apartment on Tuesday evening, her face red and blotchy from crying. "How could you?" she asked as soon as I opened the door. "How could you hurt Jessica like that? She's been like a daughter to me." "And what am I?" I asked. "You're my daughter." Which is why this hurts so much more. We stood there staring at each other across the threshold of my apartment, and I realized that this was it. This was the moment our relationship would either break completely or somehow find a way to heal. The moment when she would either finally see how much she'd hurt me or decide that I was irredeemably wrong and Jessica was irredeemably right. She didn't invite me to her wedding, Mom. Her wedding. And you supported that decision. You told me to just accept it, to make sacrifices for family harmony. Where was the concern for my feelings then? That doesn't justify, maybe not, but it explains it. Mom's face crumpled. She's talking about pressing charges. For harassment. For invasion of privacy. I felt a chill run through me. Charges? Linda's convinced that what you did was illegal. She's already talked to a lawyer. I stepped back into my apartment, suddenly feeling very young and very scared. Mom, I didn't think. No, you didn't think. You acted out of spite and anger, and now there are consequences. She was right, of course. I had acted out of spite and anger. I had wanted to hurt Jessica the way she'd hurt me, and I had succeeded beyond my wildest expectations. But the victory felt hollow now, poisoned by the realization that I might have destroyed far more than just one wedding day. What do you want me to do? I asked quietly. I want you to apologize, publicly. I want you to take responsibility for what you've done and try to make amends. And then what? Everything goes back to normal? Jessica forgives me and we're all one big happy family again? Mom's silence was answer enough. The next morning, I posted a public apology on all my social media accounts. It was carefully crafted, taking full responsibility for my actions while avoiding any language that could be construed as admitting to criminal wrongdoing. I acknowledged that I had acted out of hurt and anger, that I had made a terrible decision that had caused pain to people I loved, and that I was deeply sorry for the harm I had caused. The apology was met with a mixture of responses. Some family members appreciated it and reached out privately to express their forgiveness. Others dismissed it as too little, too late. Jessica herself never responded directly, but I heard through the family grapevine that she and Michael had decided not to pursue legal action, partly because their lawyer had advised them that the case would be difficult to prove, and partly because they just wanted to move on with their lives. The family gathering for Christmas that year was awkward beyond description. I almost didn't go, but something stubborn in me refused to be driven away completely. I showed up to my aunt and uncle's house with a carefully neutral expression and a bottle of expensive wine as a peace offering. Jessica was there with Michael, both of them pointedly avoiding eye contact with me. The rest of the family seemed to be walking on eggshells, unsure how to navigate the new landscape of our relationships. Conversations died when I entered rooms. People spoke to me in carefully polite tones, the way you might address a potentially dangerous animal. But something interesting happened as the evening wore on. Gradually, quietly, some of my relatives began to approach me. My cousin Sarah mentioned that she'd always thought the wedding invitation situation was pretty harsh. My Uncle Jim said he understood why I'd been hurt, even if he didn't approve of how I'd handled it. Even my grandmother, the family matriarch, pulled me aside to say that while my actions had been wrong, the way I'd been treated hadn't been right either. Families are complicated, sweetheart, she said, patting my hand. Sometimes we hurt each other without meaning to. Sometimes we hurt each other because we mean to. The important thing is figuring out how to forgive. I looked across the room at Jessica, who was laughing at something Michael had whispered in her ear. She looked happy, genuinely happy, and I realized that my revenge hadn't destroyed her after all. It had probably been embarrassing and upsetting, but she'd survived it. Her marriage had survived it. She'd moved on. Maybe it was time I did the same. I walked over to where she was sitting. Jessica. She looked up at me warily. Lily. I owe you an apology. A real one, not the public relations version I posted online. She glanced at Michael, who nodded encouragingly. I'm listening, she said quietly. What I did was wrong. It was cruel and vindictive, and I did it specifically to hurt you on what should have been one of the happiest days of your life. There's no excuse for that. I was angry and hurt. But that doesn't justify what I did. Jessica's eyes filled with tears. I was hurt too, by the whole David situation. I know I said I was fine with it, but I wasn't. I was pretending to be fine because I thought that's what I was supposed to do, but inside I was still angry and jealous and hurt. So you didn't invite me to your wedding. So I didn't invite you to my wedding. She wiped her eyes. Which was also wrong. You were my cousin, one of my closest friends, and I let my mom convince me that excluding you was the right thing to do. It wasn't. It was cowardly. We looked at each other for a long moment. Two women who had loved each other and hurt each other, and were now trying to find a way back to something resembling peace. I'm sorry, I said. I'm sorry too, she replied. Are we? Can we? I don't know, Jessica said honestly. This hurt us both pretty badly. It's going to take time to rebuild trust. I nodded. I understand. But I'd like to try. If you would, I would. We didn't hug. We didn't cry together or have some dramatic reconciliation scene. But we shook hands, formally and carefully, like diplomats negotiating a tentative ceasefire. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. 6 months later, Jessica invited me to lunch. We met at a small cafe downtown, both of us nervous and uncertain. We talked carefully at first, avoiding the landmines of our shared history, discussing safe topics like work and the weather. But gradually, as the afternoon wore on, we began to relax with each other. We shared stories and laughed at old memories. For brief moments, it almost felt like old times. As we were getting ready to leave, Jessica reached across the table and touched my hand. I need you to know something, she said. What you did at my wedding, it wasn't okay, but the way we treated you beforehand wasn't okay either. I've had a lot of time to think about it, and I realize now that we were punishing you for something that wasn't really your fault. David chose to ask you out. You didn't pursue him. You didn't steal him from me. And even if you had, that was 2 years ago. I was marrying someone else. There was no reason to exclude you except that it was easier than dealing with my own unresolved feelings. I felt tears prick at my eyes. Thank you for saying that. I'm sorry it took me so long to realize it. We hugged goodbye, and for the first time in months, it felt genuine. Our relationship would never be the same as it was before. Too much had been said and done for us to simply go back to the way things were. But slowly, carefully, we began to rebuild something new. Something more honest, perhaps. Something that acknowledged that families could hurt each other deeply and still find ways to love each other. The experience changed me in ways I'm still discovering. I learned that revenge, even when it feels justified, rarely brings the satisfaction you think it will. I learned that being excluded and betrayed by people you love can drive you to do things you never thought you were capable of. I learned that families are complicated, messy, imperfect entities that require constant work and forgiveness and grace. Most importantly, I learned that sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones who love you the most, and vice versa. And that understanding that paradox, really understanding it, is perhaps the beginning of wisdom. Jessica and I will never be as close as we once were, but we're family, and that means something. It means showing up, even when it's hard. It means apologizing when you're wrong and forgiving when you're hurt. It means recognizing that love and pain often come wrapped up together, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is try again. A year later, Jessica asked me to be in her baby shower planning committee. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. I said yes immediately. We're still working on it, Jessica and I. Still figuring out how to be family to each other after everything that happened. But we're trying, and that's something. Sometimes, that's enough.